Hello, welcome to Indus News with me, Usman Lone. Well, we begin this hour with our top headline, and that's Turkey. And it says it will end its operation in northeastern Syria if all Kurdish fighters withdraw from Ankara's proposed safe zone. President Recep Tayyip Erdogan said Operation Peace Spring will only end after Turkey achieves its goals. Earlier, Russian President Vladimir Putin discussed the situation in Syria with his Turkish counterpart over a telephone call. Putin asked Ankara to take steps to prevent clashes between the Turkish army and Syrian government forces.
The operation will end only when we establish control 30 to 35 kilometers into Syria without exceptions. Until we reach this goal, no power can stop us.
Hiçbir güç bizi durduramaz.
Well, Turkey says it's killed over 600 terrorists in its military operation in northeastern Syria so far. Ankara claims its forces have made their way east of the Euphrates River and are now gathering in the west. In a statement, the Defense Ministry said it has seized all border towns and villages from Kurdish fighters. But the SDF contests the claim, saying fighting is still underway in the border towns of Tal Abyad and Ras Al Ain. Meanwhile, the Kremlin said Russian-backed Syrian government troops have captured Manbij, and this is a key strategic town near the Turkish border. Well, Moscow has asked Ankara to take all steps necessary to prevent clashes between Turkish army forces and Syrian government forces. In a phone call, President Vladimir Putin discussed the situation in Syria with Turkey's President Recep Tayyip Erdogan. Putin said it is unacceptable to let ISIS militants guarded by Kurdish forces take advantage of the situation. The Kremlin said Erdogan has agreed to visit Moscow in the next few days on Putin's invitation. Russia's envoy for Syria, Alexander Lavrentiev, claimed President Erdogan has showed intent to withdraw troops after the terrorists in northern Syria are beaten. Iran's Foreign Minister Javad Zarif has also called on President Erdogan to end his military operation inside Syria. Well, Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan has stressed on the need to resolve tensions in the Middle East through dialogue. Prime Minister Khan visited the kingdom as part of his initiative to promote regional peace and security.
The Prime Minister met Saudi King Salman bin Abdul Aziz and Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman in Riyadh. PM Khan also apprised the Saudi leadership of the situation in occupied Kashmir. The Saudi leadership reiterated their support on the Kashmir issue and stressed on a peaceful resolution. They reaffirmed their commitment to deepen bilateral ties in all fields, including trade, energy, security, and defense. Meanwhile, in an interview, Prime Minister Imran Khan has signaled optimism for a possible de-escalation between the US and Iran. He says both sides realize the gravity of the situation, but Khan said it is too early to share the details of progress made as he mediates between Washington and Tehran. He acknowledged the complex nature of relations between the two countries.
Well, as the situation in Kashmir gets worse, Indian occupation forces have killed 3 young Kashmiri citizens in occupied Kashmir. The youths were killed during a cordon and search operation in the Bazalpora area of the valley. Occupying forces have refused to hand over the bodies of the deceased to the families. They've killed 11 civilians so far in October, and in similar fake operations, India's clampdown has triggered a humanitarian crisis in the valley. Well, staying with Kashmir, New Delhi has shut down mobile networks as well in Indian-occupied Kashmir after briefly restoring them. India claimed it had restored call and text services for post-paid mobile phones on Monday, following a 2-month-long blackout. But it reimposed the shutdown, saying it was causing law and order problems for the occupying forces. The New Delhi-imposed curfew and communications blackout has now entered its 73rd day. New Delhi has decided to police all educational institutions in Indian-occupied Kashmir to crush dissent against its illegal annexation. Special magistrates have been deputed to monitor and report day-to-day activities of all students, including those at primary schools. Aggravating the situation in the occupied valley, New Delhi has decided to crack down on Kashmiri students. It said Kashmir's educational institutes frequently participate in protests over the killing of civilians. Claiming normalcy, India reopened educational institutions in the valley last month, but government data shows less than 0.1% attended. The occupied valley's local media says detention of children is adding rage to escalated dissent among Kashmiris. Well, Pakistan has lodged a protest with India over recent ceasefire violations along the line of control, which killed 3 civilians yesterday. Foreign Office spokesperson Mohammad Faisal summoned the Indian Deputy High Commissioner Gaurav Ahluwalia to record a protest. Faisal asked the Indian side to respect the 2003 ceasefire arrangement and maintain peace along the LOC boundary. He said India should permit the United Nations to play its mandated role in resolving Kashmir under the UN Security Council resolutions. He said the ceasefire violations by India are a threat to regional peace and may lead to a strategic miscalculation. In Afghanistan, at least 3 security officers have been killed and 27 others injured in a suicide bomb attack in the country's eastern Laghman province. Provincial Governor spokesman Asadullah Dolatzai says the death toll may rise further. The spokesperson said the bomb exploded outside a police station and damaged a nearby seminary. Taliban spokesman Zabiullah Mujahid confirmed the attack, saying the group targeted a police headquarters with an explosive-laden truck. Zabiullah claimed 3 Ali Shang district police chief has also been killed in the attack. The attack comes a day after a helicopter crash in northern Balkh province killed 7 Afghan military personnel. Israeli forces have detained 22 Palestinians in multiple raids across the West Bank. A preacher of Al-Aqsa Mosque, Ismail Naouda, is also among the detainees. Palestine's Prisoner Society said the occupation forces conducted several raids across Ramallah and the Al-Bira district. Nearly 6,000 Palestinians, including women and children, are currently languishing in Israeli detention facilities. Well, we'll be back with more news from around the world right after this short break. Hello and welcome back to Indus News. Now, the EU says a number of significant issues remain unresolved in last-ditch Brexit talks with the United Kingdom. Briefing the European Commission, Brexit negotiator Michel Barnier said the negotiations have been constructive but not conclusive. Irish Prime Minister Leo Varadkar also said talks between the European Union and Britain have failed to resolve issues. The difficulties centre on trade and the Irish backstop. Speaking in Dublin, Varadkar said there is a pathway to a possible deal, but there are many issues that need to be resolved. Varadkar said he spoke to British Prime Minister Boris Johnson, and Johnson has vowed to take Britain out of the EU on the 31st of October with or without a deal. Well, EU and UK officials have resumed Brexit talks in Brussels for the last day, hoping to reach a key deal ahead of a key summit. Prime Minister Boris Johnson is racing against time to reach a new Brexit deal before the 2-day gathering of EU leaders. He's expected to update the cabinet on the progress of Brexit negotiations. If a deal is not approved by the 19th of October, Johnson is legally obligated to ask the EU for yet another delay in the deadline. Later, Chief EU negotiator Michel Barnier will update the bloc on state negotiations. Moreover, French President Macron will hold talks with German Chancellor Angela Merkel to chart a united front against issues from Brexit to Syria. Britain is due to leave the EU on October 31st, and PM Johnson has reiterated he will not request a delay. In Spain, Catalonia's President Quim Torra has called for a new independence referendum. This comes after 9 separatist leaders were sentenced to between 9 and 13 years, provoking protests across the region. Protesters and police clashed in Barcelona on the second day of rallies against the court ruling. Demonstrators set garbage containers and cardboard on fire. Fences were on fire next to La Pedrera, one of the city's main tourist attractions. The police have charged several through the crowd with batons several times and fired foam projectiles at the protesters. Spain's acting government has issued a statement condemning the clashes. The government said its aim was and will be to guarantee security in the country. Hong Kong politician Carrie Lam says calls for the territory's independence will not be tolerated. In her annual policy speech, Lam stressed her commitment to the one country, two systems framework. The parallel political system was introduced in Hong Kong after British rule ended. She announced several housing and infrastructure policies, saying housing was the most urgent issue facing the city. Earlier, Lam was forced to suspend her annual address after being heckled in Parliament. Opposition lawmakers disrupted the Legislative Council session by shouting slogans. The Beijing-backed leader later gave her speech over a video feed. Well, in an interesting twist in events, US House Speaker Nancy Pelosi has held off a vote to authorize an impeachment probe against President Donald Trump. In a press conference, she said there was no need to call a vote just yet. Trump, White House officials and Republicans have slammed Pelosi's decision as an unacceptable break with House precedent. They said Pelosi called off the vote because she knew Democrats lacked the support needed to win. Pelosi announced the impeachment inquiry last month into whether Trump abused his power by pressuring Ukraine for political gain. But now she said the impeachment needed to be meticulously in line with constitutional procedures.
We're here to find the truth, to uphold the Constitution of the United States. This is not a game for us. This is deadly serious. And we're on a path that is taking us to a path to truth and a timetable that respects our Constitution.
13 people have been killed in 2 separate road accidents in Pakistan. Rescue officials say 29 others have been injured. They said 8 people were killed after a passenger bus fell into a ravine off a mountainous road in Chitral, a district of northern KPK province. Officials also said 9 others were injured in the accident that occurred due to a head-on collision. Meanwhile, police said 5 people were killed after an overspeeding bus turned turtle on a highway in Nashoro, Feroz. Medics say 4 out of the 29 have sustained life-threatening injuries. Well, we'll be back with more news right after this short break. Hello, welcome back. Now, millions across the world stood in awe in the 1960s as Neil Armstrong, who was the first man ever to venture into space, took his first steps on the moon. But having very little mobility, he was seen more like bunny hopping rather than walking. Now, engineers at NASA have been working for years to allow them a better chance for astronauts to actually walk on the moon. More in this report.
Spacecraft engineers in the US have developed Orion Crew Survival Suit. It will provide a whole range of motion for astronauts on their next expedition to Moon in 2024. This is possible due to bearings on the waist, arms, and legs. These suits are also extendable and therefore one size fits all.
So the mobility is one of the biggest things. The fact that these bearings kind of go in gives you that great shoulder mobility that you saw. And that's very important for things where we're doing geology tests. If you need to pick up a rock, if you're examining something, if you're planting a scientific instrument, you need that upper torso mobility.
Another key innovation is the suit's unlimited capacity to absorb carbon dioxide, which can be poisonous in a vacuum. The Crew Survival Suit provides full life support for up to 6 days.
This suit is the Orion Crew Survival Suit, and so while the mission of that suit is to what we do when we're there, this is the suit that gets us there and gets us home safely. And so this suit is fully integrated with the vehicle. from the ground up. So when it's tailored to the human body, it's also tailored to the seat.
NASA plans to land on the moon's south pole under its Artemis mission in order to exploit its water ice for life support purposes. The agency views its return to the moon as a proving ground for an onward mission to Mars in the 2030s.
With us a little bit about how this design
Now, in business news, European stocks have traded lower due to investor skepticism over London's last-ditch Brexit talks. The Pan-European Stock 600 index fell 0.3% as UK Prime Minister Johnson seeks to hammer out a deal with the EU. The indices of London's FTSE 100 and Paris's CAC 40 have slipped marginally. Germany's DAX 30 has risen fractionally, and the financial services and retail sectors have also shed over 1% in British stocks. Meanwhile, oil prices have jumped over signals from OPEC and its allies that further supply curbs could be possible. But gains were limited due to lingering concerns of a global economic slowdown. Well, the Turkish lira has remained stable despite sanctions imposed against Ankara by Washington over its Syria offensive. Data shows the latest US sanctions have had a limited effect on the country's economy. The dollar-lira exchange rate stood at 5.89 to 1, with no substantial devaluation. The US repeatedly threatened Turkey with the destruction of its economy after its military operation in northern Syria. Well, I don't want to mess with that woman. Anyway, it's 29 degrees here in Lahore, but let's take a look at the weather around the world. Well, that's all from me and the team here in Lahore, but we'll be back at the top of the hour with the headlines. Thank you for watching and bye-bye.